It is the first time that she is at the Agile Testing Days, and I hope this is not going to be the last one. She did a great tutorial 2 days ago. The marks for this tutorial were very, very, very good, and I'm really very happy that we have she here. She's a lean and agile coach, developer, and well-known international speaker. She is a hardcore BDDer and a published poet. And I'm really very happy to have Liz Keogh here. Thank you very much for being here. Enjoy your audience. Please welcome Liz.
Wow, there really are a lot of you out there. The thing that I want to do today, I've had a lot of discussions with developers and testers about the testing and the development mindset. And what I wanted to do today, rather than just talking about how your mind makes models, I would like to actually do a couple of things to help you experience this. So some of this keynote will be interactive. Okay? All right. To start with, what I want to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about a model I made and how I discovered it was wrong. When I was a student, I wanted to write a book, and I was a lot younger than I am now. I thought it would be really cool if this book had a dragon in it. I like dragons. And if that dragon spoke using haiku. I was young, okay? I was young. I thought this was the ultimate in cool. Is there anybody who got taught haiku at school? A few of you. Okay, I was taught haiku at school. And I was taught, here's what you do when you write a haiku, okay? You have 5 syllables in the first line, 7 syllables in the second, and 5 in the third. Well, that's easy. Now we can all write haiku. As it turned out, I went online, I was like, I'd really love to see some examples of other people's haiku. And I came across the Sci-Haiku group. So this is one of my other Twitter tags, as well as Lunivore. If you send haikus to me on this tag, I will reply to you. But the Sci-Haiku group taught me some of the other aspects of haiku. They taught me that my understanding of haiku, my models of haiku, were incomplete. One of the things that they taught me was that a haiku normally has one word in it which gives the context of that haiku. So a little poem, and the context for that poem is usually seasonal in Japan. These originate from Japan. I'll give you an example of one of my favorite haiku, and I haven't been able to trace down the author to get his permission. So Ronald, if you're out there, I hope you don't mind I'm using this. I love this so much. This is the winning haiku from the Pearl Haiku competition. It's 3 lines. It adds 2 numbers together. It's a summer. So it is a haiku which is a summer, therefore there's its seasonal word. A word which gives its context. There is another aspect of haiku that is even more important and more relevant to what I'm going to do today. This is another of my favorite haiku. It's by a guy who's considered the master of haiku poetry, a Japanese gentleman called Basho. And he says, "Winter downpour, even the monkey wishes for a raincoat." Can you imagine that monkey? Do you have a picture of that monkey in your mind? With its all fur plastered to it, looking really miserable and dejected in that rainstorm? Yeah? That image that appeared in your mind when you read or heard that poem is something we call the haiku moment. You may not be familiar enough with Japanese rainstorms to picture this, so here's another one for you. Abandoned coffee growing cold. Morning stand-up. I'm far too familiar with this one. So I want to teach you how to actually achieve the haiku moment for yourselves. I'm going to get you guys to write a haiku collaboratively. So if you haven't met your pair, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to make sure you have a pencil and paper or something to write on. And if you haven't met the person next to you, say hi to them, okay? Also, while you're getting your pencil and paper out, this is a really good time to make sure your phone doesn't go off later on in the session. If your phone goes off, you will be very embarrassed and I will have to work very hard. I don't like to work very hard. So please get a pen and paper out. We're going to do a little exercise. It comes from this book here. So I actually run a haiku workshop and a lot of the concepts come from this haiku handbook. Okay? I would be very interested to see if you guys can do this exercise without talking. Without talking. It's okay if you talk a little bit, but I would like my voice to be heard over the top. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is write down a short line of text. And it's just a phrase. It doesn't have to be a complete sentence. I'm looking for something very visual or something that you can hear, something that you can touch, smell, taste, something very sensory. Okay, so if you want to write about somebody who is angry, don't write angry, write that they slammed the door. So write a short phrase, something like that, just a few words. Go on, do it. You can write a couple if you're feeling particularly imaginative. You can do it on your own. You're going to swap lines with your pairs. If you want to do it with your pair, go ahead. You can show each other what you're writing. Write a short line. So I've got some examples here. The red shoe, my mother's perfume, a ticking watch, snow underfoot. I chew my pen. I do chew my pen. Okay? Then we're going to write a long line. And the longer line is slightly harder. It's a slightly more detailed visual or sensory phrase. So the examples I've got here are things like my new coat with the big pockets, my new red coat with the big pockets, the stomp, stomp, stomp of steel-capped boots. Somewhere in the distance, Big Ben strikes 12. Standing in front of an audience for the first time. Okay, it can be something from your experience. Okay? When you have your long line and your short line, here is what I want you to do. Take the long line of the person next to you and add the short line afterwards. I've divided my long line up into two. So this one says, fireworks light up a dull evening, my mother's perfume. Do you guys get an image in your head, a scene in your head when you read this? Yeah? I can see some people nodding. Give it a go. Just really random phrases. We're going to combine them together and see if an image comes into your head.
You went too fast. Go, I'm lost.
Okay, we have a short line.
Am I writing one or two?
You can write two if you're feeling very imaginative. One is enough. If you can't think of one, take one of these. A red shoe, my mother's perfume, a ticking watch, snow underfoot. Okay? You should have somebody with you who has a longer line. Or maybe you've written a longer line yourself. I'm thinking it might just be because it's after lunch. I've done this with 50 people now. And they can come up with long lines, so I know that you can too. Write down a long line. Take your long line, split it into two, and then put the short line with it. That's a haiku. It doesn't matter what the syllable count is. Okay? Has anybody done this now? Does anybody have an image that comes to mind when you read what you've written? Yeah? You've got an image. Would you be willing to share it with us? Yeah? What do you have?
A silver roadster. Wait.
Marvelous. Thank you, Jose. Mic on, please.
Yes? Okay. A silver roadster. Dead brown leaves fall to the ground.
Thank you very much. We have a poet. Okay. Can you see how that image comes to mind? There's another one. Just two random phrases. Wind whistles through the open window. I chew my pen. And you can imagine that scene. We'll all imagine different scenes, but what we're doing is we're taking these two completely disparate phrases and we're connecting them. We're adding the extra information that it needs for these to make sense to our brains. Okay? That's the haiku moment. That point at which we start to add it ourselves. And the thing is, if I gave you something which was consistent, if I said, cold wind whistles through the open window, snow underfoot, for instance, they're too similar. We don't get that sense of putting the two of them together ourselves. That haiku moment is an example of our minds making a model. Lots of people have told me they much prefer books to films because the pictures are clearer. You know, because we're making them ourselves. So what we do when we make models, we delete things. Like I did, I said, oh, I know everything there is to know about haiku now. You know, 575. We distort, we change the things that we're seeing, we filter them, and we add, we generalize. Have you ever known anybody, or maybe been somebody, who has really low self-esteem? Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. There's an amazing film, really beautiful film called Precious. It's about a 15-year-old illiterate black girl. She can't read, she can't write very well. She's pregnant with her second baby. She's 15, she lives in Harlem. And she says to her teacher, nobody loves me. I'm useless. Nobody loves me. And her teacher says back to her, that's not true, Precious. I love you. Your baby loves you. And with those two examples, the teacher is able to break the model that Precious has of herself in her head. She's able to change the beliefs that Precious has about herself. But we do this, we generalize. We see patterns in things. We like to connect information to each other. I learnt these two absolutely gorgeous words today, or this week, when I was preparing this talk: apophenia and pareidolia. Pareidolia is the tendency that we have to see patterns in things. So I show you this number, and I can guarantee about half of you in this audience going, ooh, and you've already started looking for the pattern in them. There isn't one, I just made it up. Okay, there's no pattern, really, honestly, there is no pattern. It's okay. Yeah, I ended them all with 5s and 0s, and you've made that significant. Oh, well, the other numbers must all make sense too. Okay, I made it up. There's no pattern. All right. There's potential for a pattern. I love people. People's brains are just the most amazing things. So apophenia is a particular kind of pareidolia where we attribute significance to something. This is a picture that the 1976 Viking spacecraft took when it was flying over Mars. Can you see this face up here? Yeah? When people saw this face, they were like, oh, there's civilization on Mars. Look, they've turned a hill into a face, and they must look like us as well. How much adding of information is that? Right? So many films and books were generated from the power of this image. And faces are one of the patterns that we are so trained to see. We will see them if we possibly can. This is the same hill that the Mars orbiter rather cruelly showed to us. And you can see that actually it was just the light that made it look like a face. So why do we really enjoy doing this so much? Why do we enjoy making these connections? This is a really great book. This is A Theory of Fun for Game Design. And it talks about how we make these abstractions, we make these connections, we make these patterns. What we do is we learn something, we get an example, and we go, oh, okay. And then we get another example, and we go, I see a pattern between these two examples. I wonder if I can apply it to something else. And when the game gives us a third opportunity to apply this pattern we're learning, and we're successful, our brain gives us this little buzz of chemicals that makes us feel really good. Learning is fun. Learning is so enjoyable. That's why games are so addictive. Because they set these patterns up and they let us have a chance to try them out in increasingly difficult situations. When we're children and we start learning games, even the simplest games feel like they're fun until we work out what the pattern is and we fully understand them, and then we get bored. There's another thing that I know how to do in which we make models, and this is a much, much more extreme example of model making and model building, model destruction sometimes as well. Changing models. I've been training as a hypnotherapist. I will point out I haven't done my homework yet, so I'm not qualified. But I have been training as a hypnotherapist. And one of the gentlemen here today is brave enough to let me try this out on him. Okay? I am inviting anyone who wants to participate to also do so. So I'm going to be speaking to him, but I'm also going to be speaking to the rest of you. If you want to participate, please do so. If you don't want to participate, I can see people are sat down at the back. That's already good. Please stay quiet. I would ask you not to write, not to tap on your computers. It's only going to be about 15 minutes, and then you can get Twitter back. If you feel like you want to participate, please feel free. What I'm going to do is, it's very light, it's very gentle. It turns out that you can model hypnosis by thinking of it as having two parts to your brain, a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. This is just a way of modeling it. And hypnosis puts you in a place where those two things can communicate and share ideas very easily. Of course, we do that all the time anyway. We are already partially hypnotized. And the way in which we filter and understand the world around us tells us this. We have to be, for anything to make sense to us. There are only 2 times that you do not have some level of hypnosis already. When you are in non-dreaming sleep, so really deep sleep, or when you're unconscious for some other reason. Those are the only 2 times you do not have some level of hypnosis. I will not be turning anybody into a chicken, okay? Somebody said to me, well, if you're not a chicken, does that mean you're a pig? No, okay, we're not doing pigs either. All right, I've already told you a little bit about hypnosis. The First exercise I'm going to do is something called mindfulness. You can do it with your eyes open. After that, I'm going to go straight into a more traditional hypnotherapy exercise. And I am actually going to induce hypnosis in my kind volunteer, Hype. Can you please give Hype a round of applause? And also in anyone else who wants to participate. At some point, I am going to ask you to think of a place where you really enjoyed learning. When I do that, regardless of what state you find yourself in, please would you join in that? You can do that right now, okay? And you can enjoy thinking about that place. There's going to be a test afterwards. Okay. Hype. Thank you. Yep, here is good, wherever you feel comfortable. Okay. Over there, he says. Yeah, okay. So we did this earlier. We have actually practiced. And when I spoke to you, you said you really enjoyed it. Do you remember that I said that you would achieve it much more easily the second time? Yep. Do you think you'll achieve it twice as easily or 3 times as easily? Let's find out. That's what we call presupposition. So I've just let Hybe assume that it's going to be easy, okay? By making him choose twice or third time. The fact that he's now consciously thinking about it is reinforcing that assumption. So I love hypnosis, it's quite fun. It will be easy for the rest of you as well. But the first exercise we're going to do is mindfulness. So just sit comfortably. And I would invite anyone who wants to participate to sit comfortably as well. This is an exercise I use when I want to be very aware of things around me. I find it useful actually for establishing more accurate models, particularly if I'm in a meeting or something like that. It's a hyper-awareness exercise. So just imagine what it's like. You don't have to imagine this bit, you can. You've got your hands on your legs and you can feel the material of your clothing. You can feel the weight in the chair. You might be able to feel a slight pressure against your back from the chair back. You can feel your breathing. You can probably feel the air flowing around you. Imagine what it's like to feel that air filling this room. All the people around whom the air is flowing. Imagine what it's like to feel all the other people in this room and their presence here. And let that sensation of feeling move out through the walls, through the windows, out into the wider world around you. Feel the outside, the grass, the roads. And you can see me. Perhaps you can see behind me. Imagine that you can also simultaneously see around and behind you. And let that sight take in all the people, all their different clothing, their different faces. Let it just move outwards, through the curtains, through the walls, and out into the wider world so that you can see the grass and the roads. You can see the sky. And you can hear my voice. Perhaps you can also hear a slight rustle from the audience. You might be able to hear the buzz from air conditioning. Perhaps you can even very faintly hear the traffic outside. Just allow your awareness of your hearing to move past this room, outside into the wider world. And now if you turn to look around, you'll probably find that your awareness has widened. You might have more peripheral vision. You probably feel a lot calmer. This is a state in which I am less prone to make judgments. more likely to see things accurately and to be aware of myself and my own behavior as well. So this is mindfulness. Okay. Those people who would like to participate in the next step, please just close your eyes. I'm going to do the same. And just imagine that you can breathe through your fingertips. That strange sensation of being able to breathe through your fingertips and allowing that flow of air to move down your hands, through your fingers and out through the very ends. Perhaps there's a sensation associated with that. It might be warmer or colder. That sensation on your hands. And just allow that to spread up your arms as your breath moves down through the full length of your arms into your hands and then out through your fingertips. And your breath starts in your chest, moves through your body. Imagine it circulating all the way through your legs, filling your whole body until it flows up and out, down through your arms. And that strange sensation of just being able to breathe through your fingertips. Good. In front of you, in the space in which you find yourself, is a door. And on the other side of that door, this quality of relaxation and awareness that you now feel is twice as deep, twice as strong. In your own time, just walk forward, open that door and step through. And when you find yourself in that space, you'll see that there is another door in front of you. On the other side of that door is a time and space in which you have really enjoyed learning. You have discovered something and truly enjoyed it, truly loved it. Just open that door now and walk through. And remember what it's like to be in that space. Perhaps there were other people there. Remember how you were sitting, where your hands were, how your body was positioned. Remember the sounds around you. Perhaps someone was speaking. Perhaps you could hear movement. Perhaps you were moving yourself or saying something. Remember what you could see. The things that were there with you. The scenes around you. Perhaps that sensation of enjoyment, that sensation of learning, of being about to discover something amazing, has a feeling within you. Just give that feeling a colour. And I wonder if you can imagine that colour starting from that place in which you feel that sensation of learning and moving out, filling you, filling your body, moving down through your arms, filling your fingertips, your hands, and filling your legs all the way to your feet, filling your head, filling your mind, so that you are truly enjoying that learning, enjoying that experience of being in that place where learning is so wonderful for you. just take a moment to thank your unconscious mind for allowing you to experience this sensation. And as I count you out, remember to take that sensation with you, that ability to enjoy learning this much. 5, remembering the room in which you are. 4, remembering to take that sense of learning, that enjoyment of learning with you and thanking your mind. 3, allowing your limbs to attain the sense that they had before. 2, hearing the sounds around you in the room. 1, open your eyes. You back with us? Everybody else back? Thank you very much, Hybe. He's really good. Okay. Hybe, can you tell us where you were?
I was in NBC Business Building, Nieuwegein.
NBC Business Building.
Sorry.
Okay.
NBC Building in Nieuwegein. It's a conference.
It was a
center.
conference.
Conference
Okay,
center.
so Hybe was at a conference. Was there anybody else who was participating who remembers being at a conference where they were learning? One person. I love conferences. I really love conferences. Who was in a classroom? Loads of people in classroom. Who was reading a book? Some people reading books. Anyone else somewhere interesting? Behind a piano. Wonderful. Sitting at the computer at home. Okay? The ways in which, thank you very much, Hybe. We can go. It was really good. Okay. There are certain signs I look for to see whether somebody is really experiencing that trance state. And you can see the fingers flickering slightly, eyelids flickering slightly, and maybe swallowing. And Hybe was really giving me some excellent feedback about what he was experiencing. So that's wonderful. There are so many ways in which we can interpret the models we make in our mind, and they all depend on the context. Has anybody seen Arlo Belshi and Jim Shaw's Bloody Stupid Johnson Teaches Agile? One person, Linda. Linda, what's the context? It depends. Depends on what, Linda?
Depends on the context.
It depends on the context. What's the context, Linda?
It depends.
Depends on what?
Depends on the context.
Okay, I think you've got the idea. This is the wizard character from this sketch, right? The context in which we interpret these models depends on the context. It's very circular. What we do to create that context is we observe data. And I have Dan North to thank for introducing me to this. We observe the data that's around us, and then we filter that data. We cannot possibly understand everything that we are seeing. There is simply too much information, so we filter it. We get the data from it that we think is important to us. And from that data, we generate assumptions, we generalize, we create patterns that we're going to use again. We draw conclusions from our assumptions, so we generate more patterns based on the patterns we already know. And then we build beliefs based on those patterns. One of the beliefs I used to have before I was trained in hypnotherapy was that I was a light sleeper. The trouble is that the filters we use to observe our data are based on our beliefs. So I noticed every time I was a light sleeper, and I became quite worried about it, the fact that I could never get a decent night's sleep. So of course I never got a decent night's sleep. I was a light sleeper. When I changed my belief and thought, actually, I'm a deep sleeper. I can sleep really well, I'm just worrying about it too much. I am now a deep sleeper. I will wake up if I need to. I have also, since I started this hypnotherapy, not been late for the alarm once. I've woken up before the alarm every single day, almost bang on. This morning I set my alarm for 10 o'clock, but what I really, really wanted to do was to come and see Esther's talk this morning. So I woke up at 9 when I needed to. I keep hearing people at this conference and other conferences, and they say to themselves, I'm really bad at remembering names. Guess what? Yeah, you are. Try I'm learning to remember names instead. It's had quite a magical effect for me. I am remembering names so much better. I still don't remember everybody's name, but I am much, much better at it since I started saying this to myself instead. The trouble is, if you don't realize that you have these potentials, you don't know what you don't know. It's very hard to create accurate models when there's some things that are completely beyond us. But it's worse than that. In her talk, Linda said, we're hardwired to be decisive. Apparently Dan North, in his talk last week at Ordev, he said, we would rather be wrong than uncertain. And they've done experiments that show this. We do not like uncertainty. And Esther today, this morning, said, we're paid to be decisive, and it's better to be certain and wrong than uncertain and right. So we don't know what we don't know, we make up what we don't know. We will achieve that certainty, we will put the connections together, we will make the models in our minds. For those people who didn't use learning in a classroom, if I had told you, you're in a classroom, do you think it would have been as effective? If I had told Hype, imagine that this sensation of learning is yellow. The very vagueness of what I suggest in hypnotherapy is what allows the imagination to construct that model. And we talk about it a lot of the time as though jumping to those conclusions, jumping to those assumptions is a negative thing, but it can be really, really positive. There are two types of people in the world. Those who can extrapolate from incomplete data. Okay, there are two different types of people in the world. Why does this matter and why is this relevant to you guys? It turns out that there is one group of people who I have met who beyond any other I have ever met are capable of making these massive assumptions, jumping to conclusions, and the moment you give them two disparate bits of data, they will connect them for you. Hands up, who's a developer? Right. I gave this pattern. Somebody asked me once, they said, last week in fact, they said, what's the role of a tester in Agile, Liz? And this was a developer who asked me. I said, well, look, put your tester hat on for a moment, okay? Imagine you're a tester. What's here? And he went, well, I'm a tester, so it's a gap. I went, exactly. Okay. Turn around to Viv, who was over the other side of the table, who's a dev. I said, oh, Viv, what's in the gap? He went, what do you mean? I said, well, if you're going to code it, what do you code? He went, well, 3, obviously. I actually spoke to a real tester this week, Stefan. He went, doesn't have to be a 3. This is why testers are evil, okay? Apparently I'm quite brave to be saying this at a tester conference, but really, testers are just evil. Testers break my code. They break my models. Even when I come up with a perfectly good example, I didn't think of this. They will break my models. I want to give you another tool that I found really, really useful for this model construction, model breaking. And I'll tell you a little story about it as well. It's called Real Options. This is one of the single biggest tools I've picked up in the last couple of years. It's amazing. Options have value. Options expire. Never commit early unless you know why. Chris Matz came up with these, and he's taken the rules from financial options and worked out which ones are relevant for real life. An option is just a choice that you can have. So there is value in having choices. At some point we have to make a choice or it will get made for us. Not only do we not want to commit early to those choices, you can actually pay to extend your options. So I'm going to give you one of my favourite stories about this. Earlier this year, at the Brickell Key Awards at the Lean Conference in Long Beach, California in May, David Anderson wanted to give the Brickell Key Awards to 2 out of a shortlist of 6 people. Unfortunately, the people who needed to vote on that shortlist were people like David himself, Don Reinertsen, Carl Scotland, very busy people for whom it was quite hard to get away from their jobs and come together to do the vote. So, they had to do it with enough time to make that choice. The only time they could get together, though, was the Monday before the conference. The conference is on the Tuesday. They give out the award on the Thursday. The lead time for getting the crystal trophies engraved with the winner's name was 4 weeks. And we have already a model in our head. We're like, how is that even possible? How do you know? You've got to get them together beforehand because we're used to constructing these linear flows. David paid to get all 6 trophies engraved. That was how he did it. That was how he paid for the option. Costs about $500 extra, which is a lot less than trying to get all of those people away from those jobs. So real options, thinking about how to pay for your options, gives us flexibility when we realise that our models are wrong or where there is uncertainty about the future. It also gives us different models. Sometimes we think we don't have choices. We start to believe that we don't have choices in life. Those are the places where we make commitments to ourselves and they're damaging. I believe that I'm a light sleeper. I'm committing to being a light sleeper. Why would I want to do that? When you think of ideas, you think of models in software development, though. We can change software. Ideas are not commitments. We can help each other to create better models. We can help each other to be imaginative. We can help each other to discover examples that break the models we have already in our heads. The most brilliant experiments we make are also in our heads, as well as those flawed commitments. And they can be experiments. You can just try them out. We need devs to be able to connect incomplete data and come up with a solution in the face of uncertainty and ambiguity. I know, because I've been on a project which analysed for a year before the 3 years of development started, that it is impossible to have certainty up front in software development. This project never made it to production, it made it to court. So we have to do this thing where the devs get together and they make these constructions in their heads, but simultaneously we have to try and help them to make more accurate models. And that is what the role of a tester is for. You have now experienced what it's like to be a dev. It's a lot of fun. I am not much good at being a tester, but I know it, and I really, really value those of you who do that role for me. You help me break that model. You help me to come up with new examples, new ways of doing things. I started with haiku and the idea of what a haiku was. I'd like to share with you one of my favourite haiku and explain this to you. This is probably the most famous haiku in the world. And before I translate it for you, I want to give you a little about the context in which this haiku was developed. The Japanese used to have a lot of poetry. And a lot of the poetry was to do with water. It's an island nation, it rains a lot. They talked about the crash of waves on the shore. They talked about the sound of rain falling on their roofs into puddles. They talked about streams rushing down mountainsides, the trickle, the noise of water. It was very, very prevalent in their poetry. That was the context in which they understood the nature of water. And this was the poem that Basho gave them. Old pond, a frog jumps in. The sound of water. Thank you very much.
Great, amazing.
Thank you.
So, guys, questions. So go ahead. Questions? No questions?
One question.
Sometimes I facilitate retrospectives and join the retrospective facilitator community, and the one thing that puzzled me about how the mind makes models is that it looks exactly like the way we structure retrospectives. So we gather data, we filter data, we come to assumptions. Well, we don't end with new beliefs, we end with an action plan. Is this? I wonder if this is just chance, or if you had retrospective or something like that in mind.
Yeah, there's a great little thing that I've been looking at recently called Cunavin. It's David Snowden's complexity framework. And he has this whole thing about systems thinkers. He says systems thinkers, what they do, they look at the goal they want to achieve, and they look at where they are and they try to match that gap. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about finding examples that break the model. We want to get to this new model, how do we get there? Wherever people are concerned, I find it's what David calls a complex environment. And the thing about complex environments is that cause and effect can only be understood in retrospect, and whatever you do to observe that environment also affects it and changes it. So rather than trying to achieve a particular state, which you can't do because you can't correlate cause and effect, you don't know what's going on, you have to accept that uncertainty, accept that complexity, and you've got to try something out. So it's not that we're generating an assumption, we're generating an experiment. And if you think of it that way, rather than this action will make us better, find out, will this action make us better? The reason I love the word should in BDD is because it allows us to ask that question, should it? Should it make things better? And you can find out, he calls it a fail-safe probe, something which you can undo if it has negative consequences. And those people in the audience who are familiar with perverse incentives and the idea that we try to achieve something and it has the opposite effect because of the way we're measuring it. So, for instance, they were rewarding fossil hunters in China by giving them money for any bones they brought, and because they wanted fragments as well, they gave them money for the fragments too. So all these people were smashing up the dinosaur bones. You know, it's not what we wanted. It's a wrong effect that emerged from the measurements we were using. So make sure that what you're doing, the ways in which you're changing your environment, changing your development through your retrospectives or through your continual improvement are experiments, and you are watching for those side effects and you can roll them back. Does that make sense? Does this answer the question? Okay. Any other questions?
This might sound a bit silly, but I mean, to do all this takes a lot of awareness. And it doesn't take awareness only in yourself, but takes awareness in others as well. And that's why we are part of the team. If you start being slightly aware of something, how do you manage to bring awareness in others? Not forcefully, of course.
Okay, so to answer this one, I'm going to use a model that Benjamin Mitchell talks about a lot, which is the egregious questioning. I'm not that familiar with it, so please excuse me. I'm only just starting to use this stuff myself. But literally, he will tell somebody, here's what I just heard you say. Does that match with your memory? Are you aware that you said this? Are you aware that you behaved this way? That's how you create awareness in people. And a lot of the time when I've actually used this, people have said, oh, did I? Oh, I didn't realise. And you don't need to give them any other feedback. They were simply unaware that they were doing that thing, having that effect. So you can just ask them to be more aware. You can help give them the awareness that you see in them. Is that okay? I don't want to give an example, I'm afraid, because pretty much every example I have is quite personal to people. And I'm pretty sure they wouldn't want me to call it out. But yeah. Actually, I can give an example. Hype, when he was up here, your eyelids were flickering, your fingers were twitching slightly. Were you aware of that? Now he is. Okay.
Okay. More questions?
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you
Cheers.
very much.